Part 1. Hiroshi Yuta was 22 years old, and he lived in a small village surrounded by green fields and quiet roads in Japan. His family owned a farm that had been cared for by his father and grandfather for many years. Every morning before the sun fully rose, Hiroshi was already outside helping with work. His hands were used to soil and water, and his clothes often carried the smell of grass and earth. He was still in high school because of personal family problems that had delayed his studies. Though some people whispered about it, Hiroshi never argued or tried to explain himself. He simply smiled and continued living his life. Hiroshi was known in the village as a gentle and handsome boy. His soft face and calm eyes often made older women praise him while younger girls quietly admired him. Yet Hiroshi never paid attention to those things. He thanked people politely and stayed focused on his work and studies. There was something Hiroshi never shared with anyone, not even his family. He was gay. He had understood it years ago, during nights when he looked at boys the same way others looked at girls. He had tried many times to ignore those feelings, not because he hated himself, but because village life was simple and traditional, and he feared that people would no longer see him the same way if they knew. His father was a hard-working man who believed life should be straightforward: work hard, marry, and continue the family line. Hiroshi loved his father and respected him deeply, which made his secret feel even heavier. Still, Hiroshi carried on. He laughed with neighbors, attended school, and helped in the fields. But sometimes during quiet evenings he sat alone beside the farm and wondered if somewhere outside the village there was a place where he could simply exist without hiding. One weekend, Hiroshi had a reason to visit the city. His father needed supplies and machine parts that could not be found locally. Hiroshi volunteered to go, partly because he wanted to help, and partly because he longed to see something beyond the same familiar roads. The city felt different from his village, louder, brighter, and faster. Tall buildings stood close together while crowds moved without slowing down. Hiroshi carried his bag and looked around with curiosity, feeling slightly nervous but also excited. After finishing the errands, evening slowly arrived. Neon lights began shining above shops and narrow streets. Hiroshi considered returning home immediately, but something inside him wanted to stay a little longer, just for one evening. He walked without a clear destination until he reached an area filled with music and nightlife. People were laughing, talking, and entering bars. Hiroshi slowed his steps, his heart beating faster. He had never been in such a place before. That was when he noticed someone standing outside a bar. The man looked calm, dressed in dark clothes, taller than Hiroshi, with sharp eyes that seemed strangely quiet despite the noise around them. He appeared older, maybe around 27 or 28, and unlike the people nearby who were drinking and joking loudly, he stood alone, looking almost uninterested in entering. For a moment Hiroshi looked away, but when he glanced back, the man was already looking at him. Hiroshi felt embarrassed and prepared to leave. But before he could move, the stranger spoke. "You look like you are thinking too much." His voice was steady and calm. Hiroshi blinked and smiled awkwardly. "I guess I am." The stranger looked toward the bar entrance and then back at him. "Not your kind of place." Hiroshi laughed softly. "Honestly, I do not know if it is." There was a brief silence, not uncomfortable, just unfamiliar. The man then said, "I was about to go in, but now I am not sure." Hiroshi looked toward the loud entrance and surprised himself by answering honestly, "Then maybe we should go somewhere else." The stranger studied him for a second before giving a small smile. "Somewhere quieter." Hiroshi nodded. They left the noisy street and walked together without exchanging too many questions. Strangely, Hiroshi felt comfortable beside him, perhaps because the man did not push or pretend. He simply walked at the same pace. They eventually reached a quieter riverside area where city lights reflected on the water. Cool air moved around them while distant traffic sounded far away. Their conversation remained simple. They spoke about the city and village life, about work and ordinary things. Hiroshi avoided revealing too much about himself, yet he found himself relaxing more than expected. The stranger never forced personal questions, though his eyes seemed observant. At one point he asked, "First time here?" Hiroshi nodded. "Is it obvious?" "A little." That embarrassed Hiroshi again, but the stranger only smiled lightly. As time passed, the silence between them became softer. Hiroshi realized he did not even know the man's name, yet strangely that made the moment feel safer, temporary, and free from expectations. The stranger gently brushed Hiroshi's hand while they sat together. The contact was brief, almost hesitant. Hiroshi froze, his heartbeat growing louder. He could have moved away, but he did not. For years he had hidden every part of himself, every feeling and fear, and now, sitting beneath city lights beside someone who knew nothing about his past, Hiroshi allowed himself a small moment of honesty. They moved closer, speaking less. The stranger carefully touched his cheek and Hiroshi looked down before slowly meeting his gaze again. There was nervousness between them, but also warmth. Their closeness remained quiet and gentle, shared through soft touches and hesitant affection. For Hiroshi the moment felt unreal, not because it was perfect, but because for once he was not pretending to be someone else. Later, as the night grew colder, reality slowly returned to him. Hiroshi remembered his village, his family, and the long future still waiting ahead of him. He was only 22, and his life was still uncertain. Without wanting complications or questions, he quietly left while the man rested nearby. He did not leave a message, he did not ask for a name, and he did not look back for long. During the journey home, Hiroshi convinced himself it had been only one night, a memory that would remain in the city and nowhere else. By morning he was back in the village, wearing simple clothes and helping with work again as though nothing had happened. But while carrying tools toward the farm entrance, Hiroshi suddenly noticed someone standing near his house. His footsteps stopped, the bag slipped slightly from his hand, because standing in front of his door was the same man from the city, quietly waiting as though he had known exactly where to find him. Part 2. Hiroshi stood frozen near the farm entrance, his eyes fixed on a man standing in front of his house. For a few seconds, his mind simply stopped working. He had spent the entire trip home convincing himself that the city night was over and forgotten, yet there that same man stood calmly beside his father as if he belonged there. Without thinking, Hiroshi immediately turned around and started walking in the opposite direction, carrying his tools as though he had suddenly remembered some urgent work. His father quickly called out from behind, "Hiroshi, where are you going? Come here for a moment." Hiroshi nearly kept walking anyway, but his father rarely repeated himself, so he forced his feet to stop and slowly turned back. The closer he walked, the worse his situation looked. The stranger stood with relaxed shoulders and an unreadable expression. He looked just as calm as the night before, which somehow irritated Hiroshi even more. His father smiled proudly and patted the man on the shoulder. "This is our new tenant. I rented him the old house beside the storage shed. He moved here today." Hiroshi almost dropped the tools in his hand. "Tenant," his father continued happily, "his name is Ren Takeda. He said he wanted a quiet place for some time, and we had extra space anyway. Good arrangement for both sides." The moment Hiroshi heard the name, Ren finally looked directly at him. For the first time since Hiroshi arrived, Ren actually appeared surprised. Then his eyes widened slightly. "Hiroshi." That single word made Hiroshi tense. His father blinked. "You two know each other?" Ren immediately stepped forward. "Actually, yes. We met before." Hiroshi silently begged the ground to open and swallow him. His father looked interested. "Really? Where?" Ren calmly answered before Hiroshi could stop him. "In the city." His father laughed. "What a coincidence." Hiroshi forced an awkward smile. "Just random meeting." Ren nodded with suspicious innocence. "Very random." Hiroshi narrowed his eyes at him. His father invited them inside for tea, completely unaware that one of them wanted to disappear while the other looked strangely entertained. They sat together at the wooden table while Hiroshi kept his eyes on the teacup. His father seemed pleased by the unexpected connection. "So, how did you meet?" Hiroshi opened his mouth. But Ren spoke first. "I saw him outside at night. He looked nervous and lost." Hiroshi nearly choked on his tea. His father looked concerned. "Lost?" Ren nodded seriously. "Very uncertain. Standing outside and thinking deeply. So naturally I stayed with him for a while." Hiroshi knew exactly how carefully those words were chosen. His father smiled warmly. "That was kind of you. City can be confusing." Ren looked toward Hiroshi with completely innocent eyes. "We spent quite some time together actually." Hiroshi gripped the teacup harder. His father laughed. "You made a friend already." Good, good," Ren continued. "He suggested we go somewhere quieter." Hiroshi almost kicked him under the table. His father still understood absolutely nothing. "Ah, Hiroshi does prefer peaceful places." Ren nodded. "Very peaceful." He also left early in the morning without saying goodbye. The room suddenly became too warm for Hiroshi. His father scratched his head. "That sounds rude, Hiroshi." Hiroshi immediately protested. "It was not like that." Ren tilted his head slightly. "No, you are right. Maybe you were simply shy." Hiroshi stared at him with silent anger. His father remained completely innocent. "Shy? That sounds like my son." Hiroshi wanted to bury himself under the floor. Ren calmly drank tea as though he had done nothing wrong. The entire conversation felt like walking across thin ice while only Hiroshi knew there was danger underneath. Finally, Hiroshi interrupted. "Anyway, it was just a random meeting in the city. Nothing important." Ren looked at him for a moment before smiling slightly. "Yes, nothing important." His father clapped his hands. "Good then, mystery solved." Hiroshi almost laughed at how badly that mystery had actually been solved. Soon the conversation shifted toward farming and village life. His father explained rules of the house and rent details while Ren listened politely. Once everything finished, Hiroshi stood up immediately. "I have work." His father nodded. "Take care in the fields." Ren also rose from his chair. "I should settle my things too." For one dangerous second their eyes met. Then they walked outside separately. Hiroshi wasted no time and headed toward the fields, his mind still spinning from everything that had happened. The village looked peaceful as always. Sunlight covered the farmland and distant mountains stood quietly beyond the fields. Yet Hiroshi felt as though his peaceful life had suddenly cracked open. He spent hours working to distract himself, lifting tools, checking crops, and helping with water channels. Today was Sunday, which meant no school, only farm work and household tasks. Normally Hiroshi liked Sundays, Today he wanted the day to end as quickly as possible. Several times he accidentally looked toward the rented house and immediately regretted it. Once he spotted movement near the window and turned away so fast he nearly stepped into mud. By evening his body felt tired, but his thoughts remained restless. After dinner he avoided unnecessary conversation and quietly returned to his room. His plan was simple: sleep early, avoid the man, survive the embarrassment. He changed clothes, lay down, and pulled the blanket over himself. For a long time he stared at the ceiling. Every time he closed his eyes, he remembered Ren sitting calmly beside his father while speaking dangerous sentences with a perfectly innocent face. Hiroshi groaned softly and buried his face in the pillow. Why is this happening to me? Eventually exhaustion won and he fell asleep. The next morning came too quickly. Monday meant school. Hiroshi prepared quietly and left before breakfast became crowded, hoping distance would help clear his thoughts. School stood near the center of the village, small but lively. Students filled the corridors and classrooms with noise and conversation. Hiroshi joined his classmates while pretending everything in life remained normal. Then suddenly the morning announcement speaker turned on. Attention everyone, today we welcome a new teacher. Excited voices immediately spread through the room. A new teacher always attracted attention, especially in a small village school. Some students wondered if the teacher would be strict. Others hoped for someone young and handsome. Hiroshi barely cared. He sat quietly near the window until the classroom door opened. The principal entered first, then another figure followed behind. The moment Hiroshi looked up, his entire body froze, because standing beside the principal was Ren Takeda. The classroom erupted with whispers. He looked calm and professional, dressed neatly and carrying papers in one hand. The principal smiled proudly. "This is your new teacher." For a second, Hiroshi thought he might be dreaming. Ren scanned the room calmly. Then his eyes stopped on Hiroshi, and very slightly, almost invisibly, he smiled. Hiroshi felt his soul leave his body. What the hell is happening with my life? Part 3. The rest of the school day felt endless for Hiroshi. Ever since Ren Takeda entered the classroom as the new teacher, Hiroshi could barely focus on anything. His notebook remained mostly empty while his thoughts moved in circles. His classmates were excited. Some whispered about how young the new teacher looked. Others discussed his calm personality and city background. Meanwhile, Hiroshi sat quietly and questioned every decision he had made in life. Ren behaved professionally during class. He taught clearly and spoke politely. Yet sometimes Hiroshi could feel his gaze moving around the room. And every time that happened, Hiroshi lowered his head and pretended to be busy. When the final class finally ended, Hiroshi felt relieved. He packed his bag quickly and left before anyone could stop him. His only goal was simple: go home, avoid Ren, and survive the day. The village roads looked peaceful during late afternoon. Soft wind moved through the trees while students walked together in groups. Hiroshi kept his pace steady and tried not to think too much. Then suddenly, the sound of a motorbike reached his ears. He ignored it at first, until the bike slowed beside him. Hiroshi looked sideways, and immediately regretted it, because sitting on the motorbike was Ren. The man wore casual clothes now instead of teacher attire, and somehow that made Hiroshi even more uncomfortable. Ren lifted his visor slightly. "Need a ride?" Hiroshi answered without hesitation. "No." Ren looked disappointed in a very fake and dramatic way. "That was quick. I live nearby." "I know." Those two words made Hiroshi suspicious. "How do you know?" Ren answered calmly. "I am your tenant, remember." Hiroshi tightened his grip on his bag. "Still no." Ren slowly moved the bike beside him. "You are carrying books and walking alone." "I am simply being kind." Hiroshi gave him a dry look. "Your kindness worries me." Ren laughed softly. "That hurts." Hiroshi continued walking, refusing to look at him. But unfortunately, Ren showed no intention of leaving. The motorbike rolled beside him at slow speed, like an annoying shadow. "Come on, it is only a lift." "No, you look tired." "I said no. I promised not to kidnap you." "That makes it worse." Ren looked amused. "You think badly of me." "I think realistically." A small horn sound suddenly echoed beside him. Beep. Hiroshi frowned. "Do not do that." Ren pressed again. Beep. People started glancing toward them. Hiroshi became embarrassed. "Stop." Ren spoke with perfect calm. "Get on the bike and I stop." "Never." Beep. Hiroshi inhaled deeply. "You are childish, and you are stubborn." They continued this ridiculous journey for several minutes, one walking angrily while the other followed like an unwanted escort. At one point, an elderly woman from the village passed by and smiled at them. Young people these days are very lively. Hiroshi nearly lost his soul. Ren politely bowed his head. "Thank you." "We are not lively," Hiroshi protested immediately. The woman only laughed and continued walking. Hiroshi glared at Ren. "This is your fault." Ren looked innocent. "I only offered help, with harassment included." Beep. That was enough. Hiroshi suddenly rushed forward and started walking faster, almost running down the road. Ren followed with a motorbike for a short distance. "You are really running. Leave me alone. I am concerned for my student. You became my teacher yesterday. Still counts." Hiroshi finally reached his house, quickly removed his shoes and rushed inside before Ren could say anything else. He climbed directly toward his room and shut the door behind him. Then he locked it. Only after hearing the click did he release a long breath. His heart still felt restless, partly from irritation and partly from emotions he refused to examine. Outside the window he heard faint motorbike sounds leaving the area. Good. He sat on his bed and rubbed his forehead. What exactly was Ren trying to do? The city meeting had already been confusing enough. Then came the house, then the school, and now this ridiculous motorbike chase. Dinner passed quietly downstairs. Hiroshi kept conversation short and avoided discussing school. His father happily mentioned how polite the new tenant seemed, which only made Hiroshi eat faster. Later that night he returned to his room once again and lay beneath his blanket. The house became silent, and outside the village slowly fell asleep. But Hiroshi could not sleep. His thoughts wandered back toward the city night, the riverside, the quiet conversation, the closeness he had allowed himself to feel. He covered his face with one hand. No matter how annoyed he felt today, he could not deny that those memories still remained somewhere inside him. For years Hiroshi had hidden his feelings and kept distance from such emotions. Yet that one unexpected night had disturbed the calm walls he built around himself. Feeling restless and embarrassed by his own thoughts, he stayed alone with those emotions for a while, trying to calm himself and quiet the memories that refused to leave. Afterward he lay silently beneath the blanket, staring toward the dark ceiling. The night air felt cooler now, and little by little his body relaxed. His thoughts slowly became quieter. Eventually sleep finally reached him, and with a tired heart and confused mind, Hiroshi drifted into dreams. Part for the night passed quietly, but Hiroshi's sleep was far from peaceful. In his dream he found himself once again near the city river, soft lights reflecting on dark water while cool wind moved around him. Everything looked calm and strangely familiar. He stood alone at first, until footsteps approached from behind. When he turned, Ren was there. He looked almost the same as that first night, calm eyes, relaxed shoulders, and that quiet expression Hiroshi had already started to dislike and remember too much. For some reason Hiroshi did not run this time. The dream felt warm and unreal, as though nothing complicated existed outside that place. Ren walked closer and stopped beside him, neither speaking for a moment. The silence between them felt softer than before. "You keep avoiding me," Ren said. Hiroshi crossed his arms. "Because you keep appearing everywhere." Ren smiled lightly. "That sounds less like anger and more like fate. Do not say strange things, then stop thinking about me." Hiroshi looked away immediately. The words embarrassed him even inside the dream. Ren stepped closer until the distance between them became small again. Not uncomfortable, but enough to make Hiroshi aware of every little movement. "You looked happier in the city," Ren said quietly. "That was different, was it?" Hiroshi could not answer. The dream carried the same feeling as that night. Closeness without explanation, warmth mixed with nervousness, and for a brief moment Hiroshi allowed himself to remain there without arguing. The river wind brushed past them while distant city lights reflected in Ren's eyes, and somehow Hiroshi felt that same strange comfort he had tried so hard to forget. Then suddenly Ren reached out and gently brushed Hiroshi's hair away from his forehead. The touch was simple, yet it made Hiroshi's heartbeat grow louder. "You really are difficult," Ren murmured. "And you talk too much," Hiroshi answered. Though his voice sounded softer than intended, Ren laughed quietly, and the sound made the dream feel even more real. For a moment they remained close beneath the city lights, with Hiroshi feeling warmth rise inside his chest and confusion mixing with emotions he did not fully understand. Then everything slowly blurred. The river disappeared, the wind faded, and darkness replaced the dream. Hiroshi suddenly opened his eyes. Morning sunlight filtered through his room window. He blinked several times before realizing he was awake, and almost immediately he understood the situation. His face became red. He covered his eyes with one hand and groaned softly into the pillow. Seriously, the dream still lingered in his mind, leaving him embarrassed and restless. Feeling uncomfortable and flustered by his own thoughts, Hiroshi spent a little time alone trying to calm himself and clear his head before starting the day. Afterward, he finally got out of bed and headed toward the shower, hoping cold water would wash away both sleep and unwanted memories. The morning air felt cool against his skin while water ran over his shoulders, yet his thoughts refused to settle. Every time he tried to focus on school or farm work, the dream returned, along with Ren's voice and those irritatingly calm eyes. "This is ridiculous," Hiroshi muttered to himself. He dressed quickly and prepared for school, but even while tying his shoes he remained distracted. When he stepped outside, he nearly stopped walking altogether, because waiting near the road stood Ren beside his motorbike. The man looked completely relaxed, as if appearing unexpectedly had become his daily hobby. "Good morning," Ren said. Hiroshi sighed immediately. "No," Ren looked confused. "I did not even ask yet." "You were about to," Ren smiled. "Smart student, no ride," Hiroshi answered before anything else. "You rejected me yesterday too, because you followed me with a horn like a criminal. That was communication. That was harassment." Ren leaned slightly against the bike. "You look tired today. Mind your own business. Rough morning." Hiroshi froze for half a second and immediately looked away. "None of your concern." Ren watched him carefully for a moment. "Still, the offer stands." "I said no. You really dislike my bike that much. I dislike you following me. That hurts again. Hiroshi refused to continue the conversation. He adjusted his bag and suddenly started walking faster towards school. Behind him, Ren called out, running away again. I am late. That excuse sounded weak even to Hiroshi himself. He walked faster, nearly jogging down the road while ignoring the motorbike behind him, though thankfully Ren did not follow today. By the time Hiroshi reached school, his breathing had become uneven, partly from rushing and partly from his own disturbed thoughts. The classrooms were already noisy with students talking and moving around, but Hiroshi barely noticed. He sat at his desk and tried to focus. Unfortunately, his mind refused to cooperate. The dream still remained too fresh, and every time he remembered even small pieces of it, embarrassment returned. He rested his head against his hand, hoping concentration would return eventually, but instead, exhaustion from poor sleep slowly pulled him down. Without realizing it, Hiroshi drifted asleep at his desk. Time passed quietly around him. Then suddenly, he woke up. For one confused moment, he forgot where he was. Then reality struck him all at once. His eyes widened, because he realized he had fallen asleep in class, and his body had betrayed him in the most unfortunate way possible. Hiroshi immediately lowered himself against the desk, panic rushing through him. No. He pulled his bag closer and tried hiding himself, praying nobody had noticed anything. His heart beat wildly while embarrassment flooded his face. At that exact moment, the classroom door opened, and footsteps entered the room. Hiroshi looked up in horror, because standing near the entrance was Ren Takeda, carrying books in one hand as he entered to begin class. Part 5. Ren entered the classroom carrying books in one hand, his expression calm as always. The room slowly became quiet while students returned to their seats. Meanwhile, Hiroshi sat frozen behind his desk, trying to hide himself and praying for some miracle. Ren placed the books on the table and looked around the room. His gaze moved casually across the students before stopping on Hiroshi. For a brief second, his eyes narrowed. Then very slightly, he understood something. Hiroshi immediately looked away, his face turning red with embarrassment. Please no, he thought to himself. Please do not notice anything. Unfortunately, Ren noticed more than enough, but instead of reacting strangely, he simply cleared his throat and started class normally. Good morning, everyone. Today we continue from yesterday. The students greeted him politely. Ren began writing on the board while explaining the lesson in his calm voice, and thankfully his attention stayed on teaching, at least for several minutes. Then suddenly he looked toward Hiroshi again. Mr. Yuta, you seem unusually uncomfortable today. Are you sick? Several classmates looked toward Hiroshi. Hiroshi nearly stopped breathing. I am fine. Ren tilted his head slightly. Really? Because you look like life is testing your patience. A few students laughed softly. Hiroshi forced a smile that looked more painful than polite. I said, I am fine. Ren nodded with suspicious innocence. Good. I was worried you were having a difficult morning. The way he said morning made Hiroshi immediately suspicious. But thankfully, nobody else noticed anything strange. One student laughed and said, maybe he stayed awake studying all night. The entire class laughed, including Ren. Hiroshi wanted to disappear forever. Ren raised his hands calmly. Do not bully him too much. Everyone suffers sometimes. That sentence somehow made things worse. Still, Ren never crossed any line or embarrassed him directly. He only carried on teaching while Hiroshi struggled through the longest class of his life. Eventually the bell rang. Students began packing their bags and talking loudly again. Hiroshi waited until most people stood up, hoping he could quietly escape. Then Ren spoke from the front. Mr. Yuta, stay for a moment. Hiroshi froze. His classmates immediately reacted. Oh, trouble already? Did you fail homework? Hiroshi ignored them and stayed seated while everyone else slowly left. Once the room became quiet, Ren approached his desk. His voice was calm and low. Relax. You're acting like I plan to arrest you. Hiroshi glared at him. What do you want? Ren looked toward the hallway. Nothing serious. I was only going to suggest sitting in the teacher's office for a few minutes until you feel comfortable. Without attracting attention, Hiroshi immediately became suspicious. Why would you care? Because I am your teacher now, and because you looked ready to faint during class. Hiroshi crossed his arms. I do not trust you. That answer made Ren smile slightly. You really say honest things. You followed me with a bike horn. Fair point. Hiroshi stood up and grabbed his bag. I am fine. Ren did not stop him. Then fine. Just do not stress yourself too much. The calm response confused Hiroshi slightly. He had expected teasing or persistence, but Ren simply stepped aside and returned to organizing papers. After leaving the classroom, Hiroshi still felt restless, not because of embarrassment alone, but because he did not understand Ren at all. Sometimes the man acted playful, sometimes completely serious, and that uncertainty disturbed him. Instead of heading directly home, Hiroshi stopped near a quiet area behind the school where trees blocked most noise. He sat alone and closed his eyes. The morning had already been chaotic enough, and his thoughts felt messy and loud, so he breathed slowly and stayed there quietly for some time, allowing himself to calm down. Little by little his racing thoughts settled. The wind moved through nearby leaves while distant student voices faded into the background. When he finally opened his eyes again, his mind felt clearer. By evening, he returned home and spent the rest of the day helping with simple farm tasks. His father noticed he looked tired and told him not to overwork himself. Hiroshi only nodded and kept busy. That night passed more peacefully than the previous one, and thankfully sleep came without strange dreams. The next morning arrived with unexpected tension at school, because today was test result day. Students filled the classroom with nervous energy while teachers prepared papers. Some looked confident while others already looked defeated. Hiroshi belonged somewhere in the middle, though deep down he already knew studying had never been his strongest point. When results were finally distributed, reality arrived quickly. Hiroshi stared at his paper and sighed. His grades were poor, especially in science subjects. Nearby classmates reacted with mixed emotions, some celebrating while others complained dramatically. Then the school authorities made an announcement. Students who required additional academic support would receive extra classes from teachers. Hiroshi did not think much of it until his name was called, and then another name followed. Instructor Ren Takeda. Hiroshi looked up slowly, disbelief returning once again. This cannot be real, he thought. Later that afternoon, he found himself standing outside an almost empty classroom, holding his books with visible reluctance. Inside, only one person waited. Ren sat at the desk flipping through papers. When he noticed Hiroshi at the door, he looked up and smiled lightly. Right on time. Hiroshi entered cautiously. I did not ask for extra classes. Ren leaned back slightly. Neither did I ask for extra paperwork. Yet here we are. Hiroshi sat down with obvious reluctance. The classroom felt strangely quiet with only the two of them present. Sunlight entering through windows while distant sounds echoed from outside. Ren opened a textbook and placed it on the desk between them. Then, with complete seriousness, he looked at Hiroshi and said, "All right then, let's study biology." Part 6. The classroom remained quiet after Ren opened the biology book. Only afternoon sunlight and distant sounds from outside filled the room. Hiroshi sat stiffly in his chair, still unhappy about the entire situation. Ren adjusted his glasses and opened to the first chapter. "You look like I forced you into prison instead of tutoring." Hiroshi crossed his arms. "I already spent enough time around you." "That sounds personal. It is survival." Ren laughed softly and tapped the textbook. "Unfortunately, survival also requires passing biology." Hiroshi sighed and leaned back. "Fine. Good. Progress already." Ren began teaching normally, unlike Hiroshi expected. He did not tease or act strangely. He simply explained diagrams and terms with patience, drawing small sketches and asking questions along the way. Hiroshi struggled at first, partly because biology was difficult for him and partly because sitting alone with Ren still felt awkward. Ren noticed immediately. "You memorize without understanding. Is that bad?" "Very." "Then what do I do?" "Understand first, memorize later." He turned the book toward Hiroshi and pointed at an illustration of muscles and nerves. "Biology is not just words, it is understanding how life works." Hiroshi looked down at the page. He rarely studied seriously and usually depended on guessing during tests. But Ren explained things in a simple way that made them easier to follow. The lesson moved from cells to body systems and basic anatomy. Ren used examples from daily life, comparing muscles to farm labor and explaining how exhaustion affected movement and concentration. That part caught Hiroshi's attention. "So when my arms hurt after work, your body is responding to stress and effort." Ren answered calmly. "You work hard physically. Your body remembers that." Hiroshi looked at his own hands resting on the desk, rough from farm work and sun exposure. Sometimes he forgot that his body carried proof of his life. Ren noticed his silence. "You are listening now. I am trying." "Trying suits you better than running away." Hiroshi immediately looked up. "I do not run away." Ren raised an eyebrow. "Should I mention the bike incident again?" "That was self-defense. Against a ride home. Against you." Ren laughed again and continued teaching. The class slowly became easier than Hiroshi expected. At some point, Ren asked him to identify muscle groups from the diagram, and Hiroshi leaned closer over the desk to see properly. Their shoulders almost touched. The sudden closeness made Hiroshi sit back immediately. Ren noticed but said nothing, which somehow embarrassed Hiroshi more. "You are distracted today too," Ren said after a while. "I am studying." "You were staring at one page for 3 minutes." Hiroshi looked away, caught again. His thoughts had indeed wandered, though not toward biology alone. The strange dream, the awkward mornings, the teasing, and this constant unexpected closeness had left his mind unsettled. Ren closed the book halfway. "You think too much, and you appear too much." "That sounds like blame." "Maybe it is." For a brief second they simply looked at each other. Then Ren lightly pushed the book back toward him. "Focus, Mr. Yuta. The exam will not pass itself." Hiroshi muttered under his breath and returned to reading. Time passed quietly after that. The more Ren explained, the easier the material felt, and eventually Hiroshi found himself answering correctly without hesitation. Ren nodded with approval. "See, you are not hopeless. That is surprisingly encouraging. I saved my cruelty for paperwork." Hiroshi almost smiled before catching himself. The classroom atmosphere felt different now, still awkward but calmer than before. Outside, the sky had already started changing color, and golden light entered through the windows. Finally, Ren closed the textbook. Enough for today. That is all, for now. Hiroshi immediately packed his bag, clearly preparing to escape before anything unpredictable happened. Ren watched with amusement. You always leave like someone is chasing you. Experience taught me caution. That sounds dramatic. You on a bike horn? Ren shook his head and stood up. Before you disappear, remember this. Study tonight or I make the next session longer. That sounds like punishment. It is motivation. Hiroshi picked up his books and headed toward the door. Just before leaving, he paused, then quietly asked, "Did you really choose this village randomly?" The question surprised even him. Ren looked thoughtful for a second. Maybe that is not an answer. Maybe some places are quieter than cities, and maybe some people are harder to forget. Hiroshi felt his ears grow warm immediately. He avoided replying and left before the conversation could become more dangerous. Outside, the school air felt cooler. He walked toward home alone while holding his books against his chest. His thoughts remained messy, but not entirely unpleasant anymore. And for the first time since Ren arrived, Hiroshi found himself wondering less about escaping, and more about what exactly the strange man wanted from him. At 7, the following days passed with an uneasy routine. School in the morning, farm work in the evening, and extra biology classes somewhere in between. Hiroshi still complained internally about the arrangement, but he could no longer deny one thing. His grades had slowly started improving. Ren remained patient during lessons, sometimes annoyingly calm, sometimes playful, but never careless with teaching. That only made Hiroshi more confused, because the man who chased him with a motorbike horn and teased him in class somehow also explained difficult lessons better than anyone else. One afternoon, after another tutoring session, Hiroshi finally left school feeling exhausted. The sky looked cloudy and the wind carried signs of approaching rain. He walked toward the village road while reviewing biology terms inside his head. Halfway home, he noticed several girls from school talking nearby. The moment they saw him, their conversation suddenly became quieter. One of them smiled strangely. Hiroshi immediately became suspicious. "What? Nothing," one girl answered, though her smile said otherwise. That answer never meant nothing. Another girl spoke carefully. "You stay after school often these days?" "Extra class," Hiroshi answered. "With the new teacher, right?" "Yes, because apparently I am academically tragic." They laughed softly, but the strange smiles remained. Then one girl asked, "He gives you special lessons?" The wording irritated Hiroshi immediately. "It is just tutoring, of course." Something about her tone felt strange. But before Hiroshi could question further, they left while whispering among themselves. Hiroshi frowned and continued walking. He disliked gossip, especially in small villages where rumors spread faster than rainwater. Still, he pushed the thought away and headed home. Unfortunately, peace lasted only until evening. While helping near the storage area, Hiroshi overheard two village women speaking near the road. "That new tenant seems close with Hiroshi." "Yes, I saw them leaving school together." Young people become friendly quickly these days. Hiroshi nearly dropped the tools in his hand. Leaving school together meant simply walking in the same direction once or twice, nothing more. Yet hearing outsiders discuss it already made him uncomfortable. He immediately returned to work and ignored the conversation. But later that night, things became worse. His father casually mentioned something during dinner. "That teacher tenant of ours seems to care about your studies." Hiroshi looked up. "What?" "He told me you are improving." Hiroshi blinked. Ren talked with his father, only briefly. His father continued while eating. "I thanked him for helping you. Good teachers are rare." Hiroshi suddenly felt uneasy. It was not anger exactly, but discomfort. Why would Ren discuss him with his father? And why did that bother him so much? After dinner, Hiroshi quietly returned toward his room. But before reaching the stairs, he noticed light coming from the rented house outside. For a second, he looked toward it, then quickly looked away. "Do not think too much," he told himself. Unfortunately, his own advice rarely worked. The next morning, the misunderstanding truly began. School corridors felt louder than usual. Students gathered in small groups while whispering spread through the building. At first, Hiroshi ignored it. Then he heard his own name. He slowed his steps. Near the classroom door, two boys were speaking. "I heard Ren-sensei gives private lessons only to Hiroshi." Maybe because he likes hard-working students. Or maybe because Hiroshi is secretly teacher favorite. They laughed. Hiroshi immediately walked past them with a dark expression. Inside the classroom, the atmosphere felt no better. Several classmates glanced toward him and then toward the teacher desk. One girl whispered something and hid a smile. Hiroshi sat down heavily, already annoyed. Then the classroom door opened. Ren entered carrying books as usual, calm and professional, completely unaware of the storm waiting inside. The room greeted him, but the energy felt unusual. Ren noticed it immediately. Interesting atmosphere today. Did someone fail life already? Soft laughter spread. Then unfortunately one reckless boy raised his hand. "Sensei, can we also get private lessons like Hiroshi? Or are those reserved for favorites?" The classroom exploded with laughter. Hiroshi froze. Ren looked mildly surprised. Favorite, another student joined. Yes, Hiroshi stays with you after school all the time. More laughter followed. Hiroshi felt heat rush into his face. This was exactly what he feared. For one dangerous second, he expected Ren to joke carelessly and make things worse. Instead, Ren calmly placed his books down. Mr. Yuta receives tutoring because his grades required support. Nothing more. His voice remained completely steady. If anyone else wishes extra study sessions, improve your courage first and your complaints second. The room quieted slightly, though teasing smiles still remained. Hiroshi looked down at his desk, feeling both relieved and strangely embarrassed. The lesson began afterward, but whispers continued quietly around the room. And although Ren handled the situation professionally, Hiroshi could not shake the uneasy feeling growing inside him, because gossip in a village rarely died quickly, and misunderstandings had only just begun. Part 8. The misunderstanding did not disappear after that classroom incident. Instead, it quietly grew. Hiroshi hoped Ren's explanation would stop the gossip. But village schools rarely work that way. Once students found something interesting to discuss, they held on to it like treasure. For the next several days, whispers followed Hiroshi through hallways and classrooms. Some were harmless, some were irritating, and some made him want to hit his own desk. One student joked that Hiroshi had unlocked secret teacher privileges. Another claimed the new teacher only smiled during biology class because of him. Even girls from neighboring classrooms began looking at him curiously. Hiroshi hated every second of it. During lunch, he sat quietly near the window, trying to ignore nearby conversations. Then his friend Kato suddenly sat beside him. So, Hiroshi already looked tired. What now? Kato lowered his voice dramatically. You and Ren-sensei. Hiroshi nearly dropped his food. What about us? See, you said us. There is no us. Kato laughed. Relax. I am joking. But people are talking. I noticed, honestly. Kato continued. It is mostly because you changed. That confused Hiroshi. Changed how? You stay after school now. You actually study. And you argue with him like old friends. We do not argue like old friends. Then what do you call it? Hiroshi had no answer. That silence only made Kato grin wider. You really are strange these days. Before Hiroshi could reply, classroom noise suddenly grew louder. He looked toward the entrance and immediately regretted it, because Ren had entered to speak with another teacher nearby. The moment students noticed him, several exchanged knowing looks. One reckless boy shouted jokingly, "Your favorite student is over there." The room burst into laughter again. Hiroshi wished for immediate death. Ren remained calm, though his expression sharpened slightly. I was unaware teachers collected favorite students like pets. More laughter followed. The boy scratched his head awkwardly. Just joking, sensei, Ren answered evenly. Then improve your jokes along with your grades. The room quieted. The teasing stopped for the moment. But Hiroshi still felt uncomfortable. Something about the situation no longer felt funny, because gossip was no longer staying inside school alone. That evening things became worse. After classes, Hiroshi returned home carrying books in exhaustion. As he passed through the village road, he noticed two elderly women speaking near a shop. The moment he approached, they smiled politely. One woman said, "You study very hard these days." Hiroshi, he nodded carefully, trying to. The other woman smiled. That teacher must be helping a lot. Hiroshi suddenly became uneasy. Yes, extra class only, of course, she replied too quickly. The way she said it made his stomach sink. When he finally reached home, he found his father repairing tools outside. His father looked unusually amused, popular these days. Hiroshi stopped. What does that mean? His father chuckled. People talk. That is village life. Apparently our tenant teacher spends plenty of time helping my son. Hiroshi stiffened. It is tutoring. I know that. His father answered calmly. But gossip travels faster than bicycles here. Do not worry about it. Although his father sounded unconcerned, Hiroshi felt disturbed, because this was exactly what he feared from the beginning. His private life already felt complicated enough, and now strangers were casually discussing him. That night he could not relax. He sat beside his desk staring at unfinished homework while frustration built inside him. Why does everything become a rumor here? He muttered. The following morning, school felt tense again. Students gathered near the notice board discussing festival preparation and exam schedules. Hiroshi entered the corridor hoping for peace. Instead he froze, because pinned beside the classroom schedule was a paper listing students receiving extra support classes, and his name stood clearly beside Ren Takeda. Several students were already reading it. One girl whispered, "See, I told you." Another laughed softly. Hiroshi felt heat rise inside him. This was becoming unbearable. He immediately turned away and entered class, trying to calm himself before anger showed on his face. A few minutes later, Ren arrived. He noticed Hiroshi's expression almost immediately. "You look ready to start a war," Hiroshi answered quietly. "People are talking too much." Ren understood at once. His expression became more serious than usual. "Ignore it. Easy for you to say." Ren placed books down. People enjoy stories, especially boring people. That did not help. Maybe not. But reacting only feeds gossip. Hiroshi looked away. You do not understand. For a moment Ren stayed silent. Then he answered softly, you assume I do not. That sentence surprised Hiroshi, but before he could ask anything, classroom noise interrupted them, and suddenly another student entered loudly saying, are you staying after school with Hiroshi again today? Laughter spread immediately. This time Hiroshi stood up so quickly his chair moved backward. Enough. The room fell quiet. His face looked red with anger and embarrassment. Why are all of you acting like this? It is only studying. Nobody answered. The atmosphere became awkward. Even the joking students looked uncomfortable now. Ren watched him carefully but said nothing. Hiroshi sat down again, breathing unevenly, and for the rest of class the room remained unusually quiet. The misunderstanding had finally reached a level where it no longer felt harmless, and somewhere inside Hiroshi, frustration had begun turning into something heavier. Part 9. After the classroom incident, the atmosphere remained uncomfortable for several days. Hiroshi regretted losing his temper, though part of him still believed the anger was justified. The gossip had crossed limits and followed him everywhere, from corridors to lunch tables and even village roads. What surprised him most was not the rumors themselves. It was what happened afterward. Ren handled it. The next morning, before lessons began, Ren stood calmly at the front of the classroom. His expression looked more serious than usual. The room quieted quickly. Before class starts, I have something to say. Students exchanged curious looks. Ren continued. Tutoring exists to help students improve, not to entertain gossip. If anyone believes helping a struggling student deserves mockery, then perhaps your attention belongs on your own grades instead. The room became silent. His voice remained calm, not angry, but firm enough to stop further jokes. I do not appreciate disrespect toward classmates or assumptions about private matters. We will focus on school from now on. Understood? A quiet chorus answered. Yes, Sensei. Hiroshi sat still, surprised. Ren did not look toward him directly or mention his name, yet somehow the message protected him without making him stand out further. That afternoon during tutoring, Hiroshi entered the classroom feeling strangely uncertain. Only the two of them were there again. The room looked peaceful under soft afternoon light. Ren opened his notebook as usual. Biology survived another day. Hiroshi placed his books down. You did not need to say all that this morning. Ren looked up. About the gossip. Yes, I know. Then why did you? Ren leaned back slightly. Because it became unfair. The simple answer caught Hiroshi off guard. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Hiroshi quietly said, thank you. Ren looked mildly surprised. You say that so rarely I almost need to record it. Do not ruin the moment. Too late. Hiroshi tried hiding his smile and opened his textbook. Their lessons continued after that, but something had shifted. The awkward tension still existed, yet it felt softer now, instead of constant defensiveness. The conversation came more naturally. Ren discovered Hiroshi hated memorizing long definitions. Hiroshi learned Ren secretly disliked paperwork and village bureaucracy. During breaks between studying, they sometimes spoke about ordinary things. Farm life, city life, weather, favorite food, and strange childhood stories. One rainy afternoon while thunder echoed outside, Hiroshi casually asked, why did you become a teacher? Ren stayed quiet for a second before answering. Because someone once helped me when I needed it. That answer sounded heavier than expected. Hiroshi looked at him. And now you help annoying students, especially annoying students. That made Hiroshi laugh quietly. The sound surprised even himself. Little by little their conversations became easier, not dramatic, not sudden. Just two people learning small pieces about each other. Hiroshi still became irritated sometimes, and Ren still teased him occasionally. But the sharp discomfort from before slowly weakened. One evening after tutoring ended, rain started unexpectedly. Students rushed from school while wind carried water across the courtyard. Hiroshi stood beneath the entrance roof waiting for it to slow down. Then he noticed a familiar motorbike nearby. Ren adjusted his helmet and looked toward him. Before you reject me heroically. There is rain this time. Hiroshi crossed his arms. You remember rejection very clearly. Repeated trauma leaves scars. Hiroshi looked toward the heavy rain, then toward the muddy road home. He hesitated. Ren noticed immediately. I promise. No horn harassment today. That almost made Hiroshi smile again. After several seconds he sighed. Only because of rain. Ren looked genuinely pleased. Historic moment. The ride home felt quieter than Hiroshi expected. Cool air moved around them while village roads passed beneath cloudy skies. He sat carefully behind Ren, keeping respectful distance. Though his heart still felt strangely aware of the closeness. Neither spoke much. Yet the silence no longer felt uncomfortable. When they finally reached home, Hiroshi stepped down quickly. Do not misunderstand. This changes nothing. Ren removed his helmet slightly. Of course, Mr. Yuta, purely transportation. Hiroshi rolled his eyes and headed inside. Though something warm remained in his chest long afterward, that night while studying biology alone, he realized something unsettling. He no longer dreaded tutoring itself. And that realization frightened him more than gossip ever had. Because understanding another person was dangerous. and without noticing, both of them had already started trying. Part 10. Spring slowly arrived in the village. The cold weather softened and the fields around Hiroshi's home became greener again. Life continued moving forward, though something between Hiroshi and Ren had quietly changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but little by little, the gossip eventually faded. As gossip always did when people found newer things to discuss, school became calmer again, and Hiroshi focused more seriously on studying than he ever had before. The extra classes continued, but they remained exactly what they were supposed to be: lessons, conversations, and shared time that slowly built trust. Ren never crossed boundaries, and perhaps that was what surprised Hiroshi the most. For someone who teased so much and appeared everywhere unexpectedly, Ren understood distance when it mattered. That understanding made Hiroshi lower his guard without realizing it. Weeks turned into months. Hiroshi's grades improved enough to shock both his classmates and himself. Even his father noticed. "You actually study now," Hiroshi answered while pretending not to care. Apparently survival requires biology too. His father laughed loudly at that. Meanwhile, the village grew familiar with Ren's presence. People respected him as a teacher and appreciated his calm nature. And although Hiroshi still complained internally about his motorbike and irritating smile, he found himself growing used to seeing him nearby. One afternoon after class, Hiroshi and Ren remained alone again inside the classroom. Sunlight entered through open windows while spring wind moved the curtains gently. Books rested between them as usual, though today's lesson had already ended. Ren closed the textbook. "Congratulations. For what? You passed the latest test properly, without miracles or cheating." Hiroshi looked almost offended. "I never cheated. I know. That is why I said miracle." Hiroshi rolled his eyes. Still, he looked quietly proud. Ren noticed. "You should smile more when you are happy." "I am smiling." "That is your serious face." "Maybe I only have serious faces." Ren looked at him for a moment. "No, you do not." The room became quieter after that. Outside, distant student voices slowly disappeared as everyone returned home. Then Ren spoke again. "My transfer request was approved." Hiroshi looked up immediately. "Transfer?" Ren nodded. "I will leave after this term ends." The words landed unexpectedly inside Hiroshi's chest. For several seconds he said nothing. He had always assumed Ren would remain nearby. Annoying and calm and strangely difficult to understand. But suddenly that future looked uncertain. "Why? Teachers move sometimes," Ren answered softly. "That is normal." Hiroshi looked down at the desk. He wanted to say something careless or sarcastic, but no words came. Instead he only asked, "Where?" "Back to the city." "Probably." Silence settled between them again. And for the first time Hiroshi disliked silence. The following days felt strange. He still attended school and worked at the farm, yet the approaching goodbye stayed quietly inside him. That feeling confused him, because somewhere along the way he had stopped seeing Ren only as an inconvenience, and started seeing him as someone important. The realization frightened him more than any rumor ever had. Then finally came graduation season. The school held its small ceremony beneath clear skies while families gathered proudly. Hiroshi stood among classmates, wearing formal clothes, feeling both relieved and nervous about the future ahead. His father looked unusually emotional and repeatedly adjusted his collar. "You finished at last." He sounded proud. Hiroshi smiled softly. "Looks like it." After the ceremony ended and people slowly dispersed, Hiroshi wandered toward the quieter school courtyard, and there, near blooming trees, stood Ren. No classroom, no textbooks, no lesson between them anymore. Only two people standing beneath soft afternoon light. Ren smiled slightly. "Graduate Hiroshi, you do not make it sound dramatic. I think you earned some drama today." Hiroshi looked at him quietly. "So you are really leaving?" "Yes." The answer felt heavier than expected. Wind moved gently through the trees around them. Then Ren stepped closer, not too close, only enough that conversation became softer. "You know, you run away less now." Hiroshi looked down. "Maybe I got tired, or maybe you changed." For a moment Hiroshi remained silent. Then he finally asked something he had avoided for months. "Did you really choose this village randomly?" Ren smiled. The same calm smile Hiroshi had known since the city. "No." Hiroshi looked up, surprised. "I remembered someone who disappeared without goodbye," Ren continued, "and I was curious whether he always ran that fast." Hiroshi felt warmth rise to his face. "That sounds ridiculous. Maybe, but true." The distance between them felt smaller now, not because of closeness alone, but because honesty had finally arrived. Hiroshi looked toward the school building and then back toward Ren. "You were annoying, I know, and dramatic. I know that too. And your bike horn should be illegal." That accusation hurt me deeply. Hiroshi laughed softly, a real laugh this time. Then, after a quiet moment, he said, "I am glad you came here." The words surprised even him. Ren's expression softened. "I am glad to." The afternoon sunlight rested gently across the courtyard, while spring flowers moved nearby. No crowd watched them. No gossip followed them. Only peace remained. Ren held out a small piece of paper. "My number, in case you stop running completely someday." Hiroshi accepted it carefully. His heart felt strangely light and nervous at once. Then, after a short silence, he answered, "Maybe I will call, maybe I will wait." And for the first time since that unexpected night in the city, Hiroshi did not feel afraid of what came next, because life ahead still looked uncertain. But now uncertainty no longer felt lonely, and beneath the warm spring sky, with graduation behind him and tomorrow waiting ahead, Hiroshi smiled quietly toward the future.